All right, it's 5:30, time to call the meeting to order. Would you please stand as we recite the Pledge of Allegiance? I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you, everyone, for being in attendance today. Hopefully this will go rapidly and we can move on to other things this evening. Gentlemen, I understand that we have to amend the agenda, and there are 2 executive sessions. And Mr. Hayes?
Yes, Mr. Mayor, I move that my motion will be that we include, after public concerns, and a new item 10, executive sessions. The first one for confidential data relating to financial affairs and trade secrets, and the second for the purpose of acquisition of real estate for city and public purposes.
Do I have a second?
Second to add that, or a second to approve the agenda?
Second to add these 2.
Well, I would like to modify the agenda with consent agenda, item B, removed to items for commission action.
Item B on the consent agenda.
Yeah.
Okay.
And
I amend my motion to include item B, consent agenda, move to items for commission action.
All right. Do I have a second on
I'll
that?
second the motion.
All in favor signify by saying aye.
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 Aye. Motion carried. With those changes that we have just adopted, do I have a motion to adopt the agenda as amended?
So moved.
Second?
Second.
All in favor signify by saying aye.
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 Aye. Motion carried. Moving on to item number 2, appointments. Independence Recreation Commission. There is one term expires on July 1st of 2021, and we had several applicants for that. And I would like to nominate Moises David Rivera to fill that expired term of July 1st of 2021 on the Independence Recreation Commission. Do I have a second?
Second.
All in favor signify by saying aye.
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 And I wish to thank Tony Holmes for his service. He has served 2 full terms on the Recreation Commission Board. So, Tony, thank you very much. We appreciate your time and your service to the community. It was welcomed. Thank you. Moving along, we have the Park Board. We have 3 terms that expire on July 1st of 2021, and the 3 terms are eligible for reappointment. The following Park Board members are eligible to be reappointed to a second term ending July 1st of 2024. And those that I would nominate to be reappointed are Anita Shapay, Alex Moore, and Marty Long. And do I have a second on that?
Second the motion.
All in favor signify by saying aye.
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 Aye. Motion carried. Thank you. Moving along to the consent agenda. We've had a chance to look at it, and we have modified that. Do I have a motion to approve the consent agenda?
I move that we approve the consent agenda as amended.
And do I have a second?
Second.
All in favor signify by saying aye.
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 Aye. Motion carried. All right. Let's move the item B, which was on the consent agenda. Let's go ahead and take this first. And that was consider adopting an ordinance related to the implementation of residential sanitation polycarts. So, John?
Good evening.
Gentlemen, how are you this evening?
Wonderful, wonderful. After because we purchased the carts and because they provide a much larger volume, one of the things we discussed in purchasing the carts is we could take our trash collection to 1 time a week. And that's one of the major themes of the changes to the ordinance, is taking it from its current twice a week to 1 time a week. Additionally, and that appears to be the norm with these sizes of containers. Additionally, the idea was to make minimal changes except for those changes that are related to having the larger carts. And so we did change the fees as well, but we didn't raise the fees. So if you're a normal residential customer and the 95 gallons of trash, which then the carts are rated for 330 pounds. So that's a lot of trash. If that serves you, you'll notice no difference except for once a week.
Right.
And you'll notice that it'll be the once a week, and just the cart will be there.
The Commissioners, what questions did you have for John concerning this?
So with this, there is an option that should a family be large enough to generate more trash than 1 polycart will hold, that they have an option to request a second polycart?
Absolutely. It can be either requested, or if it's continually that they have extra container after extra container, at a certain point the ordinance would allow us to say, here's your extra cart, and we will, and there is an additional fee for that.
Okay, so occasionally, if somebody has more waste than will fit in 1 polycart, they can place a typical garbage can next to the polycart, and both of them will be picked up.
Absolutely.
But then if it continues, the second cart would be provided at no charge for the cart, but they would be charged an additional pickup fee.
Yes.
Okay.
And the additional cart is charged at the current residential hardship rate for everyone, because
Okay.
that's kind of assumed to be the incremental cost for a pickup of that nature.
Okay. I had a few questions concerning that from residents, how that was going to work, and that clears that up. Now, are we going to address the placement of the polycarts in an ordinance at a later date, or is it still kind of under the study where they're going to be needed to be positioned?
That's absolutely still under study. What we have done is we've broken up the city into 5 collection zones for residential refuse collection. And I want to make sure the numbers work. Mm-hmm. So what we're going to do is, fortunately, we've been working with the county, and they know all of our addresses. And I want to make sure that we're pulling from roughly the same number of residences on each day to make sure that those zones fit. So, and after we have that, if we've established those zones, then we would be able to communicate that out to people, and also communicate where to put your trash out too.
Okay, so some might be relocated to front curbside, and some might still remain in the alley?
Absolutely.
Okay.
Yeah, one of the things that we have found, one of the things I've definitely noticed, is with both the sanitation and street departments, the alleys, the primary contributor to poor condition in the alleys is the sanitation trucks. We might have sanitation trucks weighing in excess of 35,000 pounds going down an alley, and the alleys are designed with the weakest amount of pavement because they're such low speed. And so I've noticed a tremendous amount of complaints about the alleys, and well, the sanitation trucks are typically the reason.
So the location is yet to be determined?
We have a draft of the alleys that are going to maintain, and there's certain
Okay.
it's not completely done yet,
Mm-hmm.
but there are certain places where we really, for just good common sense, have to stay within the alleys. So for instance, if you think about the alleys on the west side of North Penn, I mean, we're not going to stop the sanitation trucks in the middle of North Penn to pick up, I mean, that would be just dangerous for all involved.
And I think the 500, 600 block of South Sixth, the west side is elevated 4 or 5 feet, so it wouldn't be practical
Yes.
in that location.
Yes.
So it'll, okay.
Yeah.
Well, I think that's all the questions that have been brought up so far.
And we want to make this logical and, you know, as easy as possible for our customers. And the flip side, if we can also put the sanitation trucks on the stronger streets that are more well-designed for them, it'll ultimately reduce the cost to the city and increase and make the conditions of our alleys better.
Now, I've noticed what you're talking, and quite a few alleys need attention, and still we've got a lot of gravel alleys that
We do.
during certain seasons get more abuse than others.
Absolutely.
So that's good. Okay, I appreciate it, John.
Commissioner Hayes?
No, I have no questions of John. Thank you.
John, those, by going to a smaller size, medium-sized sanitation truck, what was the difference in weight between the larger ones that we incorporated right off the top of your head? And if you don't, that's fine.
It's in the neighborhood of 8,000 pounds difference.
Difference between the large and the,
On the gross vehicle weight, yeah.
yeah, okay. All right. And that hardship rate, do you remember what that was?
I believe it's 1458. It's less than 15. It's 14
Okay, and
something.
that is a monthly
That is monthly rate, yes.
monthly rate, 1458, okay.
Yeah.
Okay, that's kind of what I thought, but I wasn't sure. I didn't have my note down. Okay, that's all I have. All right. John, thank you very much.
Thank you.
All right, moving along. Next item.
We'll need a motion.
Oh, I'm sorry. Getting ahead of myself. I need a motion on this.
I move to adopt an ordinance amending the current ordinances having to do with the collection of solid waste.
Second.
All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye, motion
And
carried.
I move to adopt an ordinance amending Appendix D to include fees for collection of solid waste in city-provided containers.
Second.
All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye, motion carried. Thank you, gentlemen. Next item, consider adopting an ordinance modifying the fees related to regulation required.
Mr. Mayor,
Yes,
I
sir.
think we covered that in the consent agendas. We're ready.
Oh,
for
I'm
public
sorry.
hearings.
Hang on a minute. I'm a little confused here today. Sorry. Public hearing. Item A, public hearing to consider condemnation of the following structure as dangerous and unsafe. And the first one on the list is 801 East Birch Street. David.
Mayor, this structure they're continuing to do work on, and they have submitted a plan to Tyler, and Tyler is asking that we adjourn this hearing. I believe it was for 60 days. Is that correct? I don't
Okay.
have that in front of me.
He's got a plan from the
He
owner of
has
the
a plan,
property
and they are working and continue to work to rehab this structure.
Okay,
So,
good. I know they had made some progress months ago prior to cleaning up the property. There was a lot of abandoned vehicle or two and motors in the yard and metal fence up, and
Yes.
they've cleaned that whole corner up, so
Yes.
that in itself was an improvement. So
Yes.
I'm glad to hear that. So any questions for David on this one, gentlemen?
I have none.
All right, then, do I have a motion on this?
I move to adjourn the public hearing for 801 East Birch Street until September 10th, 2021 at 5:30 PM.
Second.
All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Motion carried. Thank you. The next item is, number 2 is 426 South 16th Street. David?
Mayor, this structure is the structure that was accidentally had some demo work done on it, and the demo contractor with the owner of the property settled on the side. Since that time, Tyler has had one, maybe two communications with them, but they have never submitted any plans, timelines, or done anything about how they're going to proceed. So at this time, we are asking to adopt a resolution condemning the structure as dangerous and unsafe.
Okay. So at this time, I need to open a public hearing for this. Is there anyone, is the owner for 426 South 16th or a representative of 426 South 16th in the audience that would like to approach the commission and have some input on this? Anyone from the neighborhood that would like to approach the commission with input on this? Then I will close the public hearing. Gentlemen, do you have any questions on this particular one?
I'm good.
I have no questions.
All right, then I'd like to entertain a motion.
I move to adopt a resolution condemning 426 South 16th Street as dangerous and unsafe.
Do I have a second?
Second.
All in favor signify by saying aye.
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 Aye. Motion carried. Thank you. Item number 3 here, 2009 and a half North Penn Avenue.
Mayor, I believe the new owner
Yes.
is here for that.
Yes, I have Omar El Sabasi. Omar, how are you? Would you like to come up to the podium here and I can give you 3 minutes to summarize what it is you want to bring to the commission.
Sure. So I just closed on 2009 and a half North Penn Ave on June 2nd. We finalized the closing, and we've already cleaned up the exterior of the property, removed all the damaged material from the fire that happened last May from the outside of the property, and started to go inside and remove all the belongings that the previous owner had left. A couple weeks ago, I got a bid from Wilson's Restoration to go ahead and restore the entire property inside. Basically strip down the master bedroom where the fire was to the studs, seal everything, and then remove all the smoke damage from the rest of the property internally, clean up all the vents inside, and then I have another bid coming in from a contractor to go ahead and do the rebuild on the inside as well. And I have a roofing contractor coming over to just verify that the roof is still in good condition, and I've been able to accomplish that over the last 3 weeks. So just waiting for the bids to come in, and really it's just a matter of getting everything and then going to the bank and getting a loan to go ahead and start construction on it.
Okay, good.
So,
Thank you. I'm glad to hear that.
Yeah.
That's still a good potential piece of property there.
yeah, absolutely. It's cinder block and bricks. I mean,
Yeah.
and the structural integrity is all there. It's really cosmetic, and so I had an electrical contractor come through and give me a bid as well to go ahead and rewire everything, because they had quite a bit of electrical damage in there. I think that's how it started, was from an Xbox or something. So
Okay,
yeah.
all right.
So I don't know the timeline right now. I would imagine as soon as I get all the bids in, it would take, depending on when I'll get the bids in and everything, and then the schedule of everybody else, because I know there's a lot of contractors that are tied up right now
Right.
with
Sure.
everybody else that's got projects going on. So I would imagine within the next 4 months I should be able to get it done. Ideally, I would like to get it done within the next 2 to 3.
Okay.
So,
Just work with Tyler Henry.
okay.
Work with him and let him know what your plans are and give him updates. And as long as you follow through, we'll have a good understanding of how you're going to proceed on that.
Yeah.
And that'll work. Good.
All
I'm
right.
glad to hear that.
Okay. Thank you very much. Appreciate it.
All right. Thank you for your
Thank
time,
you,
for
Omar.
speaking. All right, gentlemen. Do I have a motion on this?
I move to adjourn the public hearing for 2009 and a half North Penn Avenue until September 10th, 2021 at 5:30 p.m.
Second.
All in favor signify by saying aye.
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 Aye, motion carried. Thank you. Item 4, commission action. Item A, consider schematic design for 1916 City Hall and the Fire EMS facility. Vance, how are you this evening?
I am fine. How are you?
Good, thank
Glad
you.
to be here with everybody. We've made a lot of progress. We've made a lot of changes in the design. So what we thought we would do was take the time to run through the design for you and let you do your evaluation, see what city staff have come up with. And I think we're certainly excited and pleased that it appears that we have a really efficient plan now based on the revisions.
All right.
So, if I could, I'm going to start with the City Hall project, and then Chris will join us through Zoom meeting, and he'll run through the fire and EMS project. I guess one thing to start with, I will let you know that some of the changes that you're seeing today are actually a result of the construction manager at-risk interviews. When we put together, worked with the city to put together the request for qualifications, request for proposals, we talked about the challenges that we were going to have at City Hall. One of those challenges was how we would handle the dispatch area that needs to be within a hardened shell, and the option of whether we build that hardened shell within the existing east addition or whether we look at actually removing that east addition and building a brand new large addition. As part of the interviews, the comment that came out through McCowan Gordon, who has been selected, was, have you thought about or have you looked at moving dispatch into the south addition that we were planning on doing? What that potentially will do is to be more efficient in construction and labor and materials. And so as part of the schematic design process, what we did is we actually refined the previous concept design, made improvements to it, but then we came up with a second option to be evaluated by city staff. And actually, with working with city staff and police, everybody determined that this second option worked much better for them. So I'm going to run through that for you. We're going to start simply with the basement. The basement hasn't changed a whole lot, the lower level in City Hall. We have men's and women's lockers for police. We have a small break room. We do have the child in need of care down there in IT. One element that you will notice that's different from the previous plan is that KBI is now located in the lower level. KBI isn't there all the time. KBI likes to be, in fact, separated from others as well, as long as they have space to meet with the police department. So KBI has moved to that lower level. So very little changes to the plan for the lower level of the City Hall.
Would you want questions as we go through each floor, or?
Let me run through all of them,
Okay.
and then we can come back to any floor you'd like, because there are reasons and for what we've done potentially on other floors that affect alternate floors as well. So there's the larger plan, so you can see it in a little more detail. When we look at the first floor of City Hall, when we talk about access and how the public enters the facility and where police and the sally port is, that's what you're going to notice as the largest change here. Police now, in this particular plan that was selected, would actually utilize the apparatus bay for where the fire department was located in Old City Hall. So one bay would be used for the sally port, and that means that now the public is, instead of creating an accessible entrance in one of those sally port bays, we're looking at the public entering the south side of City Hall. The main historic entrance remains open, and an accessible entrance will be created on the south. Very similar to the conditions that you had previously before the renovation. That's the biggest change. So I'm going to go to a larger plan.
Okay.
What it means is if I'm the public, I'll walk in the historic front door, and right there I'll have city staff and a transaction window that I can go and do business. If I want to or need to come in the accessible entrance on the south, I would walk in the door and go to the left within close proximity to that same transaction window. So the previous plan actually had the public having to walk from the north around to the south over into City Hall to the original front door. So this actually is more efficient from a circulation standpoint. And for those that can see the screen, there's the front door. You walk in, there's the transaction window. The accessible entrance is now at the south side of the building. I come in and I walk and do my business there. You'll notice that we have a nice lobby on the south that allows us to have people congregate before they go into the municipal court so they can utilize this area efficiently. It's not a long skinny hallway that it was before. What it also allows us to do is after hours we can develop a control point to where those doors are locked there. When the public comes in, they can immediately talk with police, and yet they still have access to the public restrooms that are along the corridor. And that was important for the city to make sure that 24/7 people can find safety within this building and conduct the business that they need. So for Municipal Court now is more of a rectangular shape space rather than a little bit of an odd shape that we had before. We have the clerk adjacent or within close proximity, so as people come in, conduct their business, then they can go to the transaction window for the court. We also are providing a small meeting room. That's a multi-purpose meeting room, but that allows then clients and attorneys to meet privately before they go into the courtroom rather than out in the main lobby. So that's a good multi-purpose space. Before I move to the police operations, one of the things you're going to notice was that we, in the previous plan, had a second elevator proposed that started out within the apparatus bay, punched through the roof, and went all the way to the third floor.
Right.
And that meant we were digging an elevator pit, we were constructing the shaft, and that shaft then had to go through the historic building up all the way to the height that we needed. We believe that utilizing the existing elevator and shaft, that we can modify that shaft to cut through the roof on the third floor in order for that elevator, a new elevator, to be go all the way and serve all floors from basement to the third floor. So, and we did that, one for cost savings reasons, the other was for the efficiency of future maintenance and costs associated down the road as well. So that was another change that you will see from the two plans. When we look at police, they're utilizing, like I mentioned, the Sally Port, or the old fire door to the north that allows them to park vehicles, come into the booking area with the restroom beside it, and then they're confined within there. Evidence can be stored immediately into the evidence storage areas, and then there is an interview room as well. And so that is a nice, confined, efficient area of the police. Now, the police have a single pedestrian door that they can utilize here on the north. They can also utilize the public door and enter through a controlled access here. And within this area, this of course is the roll call area that is a multi-purpose space, plus it has the workstations for paperwork, and then of course to the south of that is the sergeant's area. So again, nice and efficient combined use. People are in close proximity. And then what we did down south within this addition, and right now it's about a 900 square foot addition to the south, that can be the hardened shell, and that's for dispatch. And so it can be secured here. They are located here. They do have their own break room and they do have their own restroom because you don't want them too far away. Because right now you have basically 1 to 2 people serving at different hours, and so they need to be in close proximity to their stations. We also are proposing this call station or window that during normal operating hours, then you have staff within the police department, the records person can actually serve that window. After hours, then somebody in dispatch is in close proximity to that window. So we really, obviously there isn't anything that's perfect, but we felt like with the modifications that we've made to the first floor, it certainly has become more efficient. And I'll be happy to answer questions after we go through the upper floors. Second floor is still pretty close to what it was before. City manager area is here. We have building inspection, and engineer in that area. What you'll notice is that we did eliminate a large conference room right in the center. And in working with the police, they needed a larger workroom. They needed more space in order to be able to do their work. So what we have for shared space is a large conference room adjacent to a break room with a partition that would allow both of those spaces to work together. So if there is a large meeting where you need additional space, you can actually open up that room. When you are the public, you would walk into the first floor. You would go up to the transaction window. If you want to work with the city manager's office, you would then be escorted up the stairs or key card or controlled of the elevator and be brought up. You walk through the double doors, and then the control point, of course, between the city manager and assistant city manager. So there is a level of control both at the front door as well as when you enter the suite. For the police, they have the existing or historic stair that they can utilize. They can utilize the public stair and they can utilize the elevator, and then they have a controlled access point here off of the stair. They also have and we needed this as a second means of egress out of the suite, so they also have another entry or exit point here off the workroom. All the doors going into the police department are controlled access doors. When you come in, you have the administrative staff right there in the center. Then you have the offices for the chief and the captain, file storage, and other officers right here in the blue. And then the detective suite has changed so that we have given them an area that they can work together out of their offices in a joint space, and also created a small interview room up in this area as well. So the second floor tweaked a little bit, not a whole lot of changes. By removing that future elevator, it opened it up to where we had a little more staff, or a little more square footage on the second floor. Third floor is simply storage, but the change is that this elevator would be modified. We would penetrate the roof. We would extend the shaft in order to allow that elevator to go all the way from basement to third floor. Same controlled stair access point here. Police have a large area for storage. City has storage. And then we're still showing a large area for mechanical, because the idea is we'll probably be potentially be feeding from the basement up for lower floor and from the top down as a concept. What I would tell you is my guess is that mechanical room certainly will change in size once we start laying out and evaluating different mechanical systems. So that's a very quick run through of all 3 floors. Do you have questions?
On the As far as going through the roof and making that elevator reach all 3 floors, that's not a major problem trying to accomplish that.
So there is a cost involved, certainly.
Right.
It is a concrete structure, but so was the apparatus bay roof. So we were cutting through, even though we were trying to align the elevator in the previous plan with the hose tower shaft. Obviously, the elevator shaft is larger, so we would be cutting concrete structure in the previous design, and so we'll be doing the same thing here. So it's not adding to the cost, but it is an element that we certainly have to acknowledge and address.
So we'll be cutting through the top of the roof.
Roof floor, extending the shaft to the height that it needs for the overrun clearance, and then we'll be building a little bit of a higher roof on top of that shaft.
So does that somehow affect the existing roof that's on there now?
So we will be cutting through that.
I mean, as far as the warranty on the roof?
Yep. Yes, so, and in both schemes, whether we were doing the separate new elevator, we were cutting through and affecting that roof. This does the same thing, but the type of roofing that was installed in phase 1 can be adjusted and modified in order to flash into this new extended head house for the elevator.
Okay.
That's not an issue.
Okay. Gentlemen.
Continuing a conversation then about the elevator, is any of the existing elevator going to be reutilized, or will that be all new?
So now that we're just about to have the construction manager at risk on board, that will be one of the things that we'll work together to evaluate. What kind of condition is it? The building's been vacant for a while, it's not heated and cooled. What kind of condition, what kind of costs are involved with trying to repair or upgrade that elevator itself. So we'll report back to you as part of that design development phase, which is the next phase of design, on whether it needs to be new or whether it can be fixed.
And I'm sorry, Vance, I don't hear very well. What's the next, what did you call that next phase?
Right, so we are finishing what's called schematic design.
Right.
The next phase of design is called design development. And during that phase of design, we work with city staff addressing all of the detailed requirements within their suites, their spaces. Decisions are made. Evaluations, for example, for that elevator will be done during that phase. So that by the time we're done and presenting design development, we'll know whether it's a new elevator car or whether what we have can be modified to work.
So thank you, Vance. I am new to some of these terms. In November, we talked about programming, the program space, and that conversation was really focused on defining the aggregate and the specific square footages that we thought were going to be appropriate to the services and the processes that we're going to try to support.
Correct.
That was the goal of programming space. Then schematic is a new step towards detail and defining the detail that is needed in order for us to begin to actually apply design techniques and design strategies to come up with something that can actually be built,
Yes,
right?
yes.
Okay.
And then when we finish the design development stage, which is the next phase we'll be moving into, if you agree with this schematic design, at the end of design development, that really is considered a design freeze. We won't be pushing and pulling and moving people around or spaces around. That is a good chance for us to have everything so well defined that we're ready after the end of design development to move into construction documents. And that's simply creating a package that the construction manager can then take out on the street and bid to subcontractors and have the work clearly and fully defined. So next phase, you could see some tweaks occurring within the design.
in the design development phase, we could see some changes.
You could, yes,
Okay.
yeah.
All right.
Because we'll really get into how many file cabinets everybody needs and are they in the location that they want, well, things like that.
Okay. So as I was looking at this and comparing it to the programs, it is really, there's a lot of changes. There's a lot of tweaking that has gone on between the program space and the schematic design steps. So in the next phase, we'll probably see some tweaking, but no massive changes.
Exactly.
And then we'll really lock it in for construction documents and,
That is correct.
and be able to go forward with getting a real handle on cost after that.
Yes,
Okay,
yes.
that's very important that I understand that. I think I will know, that's very helpful to know that. Thank you.
The elevator will probably have to be replaced since the piston's only long enough to go to the floors that are there, and to increase it, you're gonna have to rebore. This is a dual-sided car, that's a single-sided. So when you replace, are you gonna look at a hydraulic
We'll look-
similar to that, or are
Yeah.
you gonna go to another type of?
We'll look at both, traction machine roomless, traction elevators, as well as what it would take with hydraulic. For years, hydraulic was the most cost-effective for low-rise buildings. What we're seeing is now the new machine roomless traction elevators are right there in line with the costs. Yeah,
For a hydraulic, they usually require the equipment room adjacent to the shaft, and in the basement, there's no equipment room shown.
correct.
So are you leaning
So,
anyway, or just, because that's going to modify the basement plan?
yeah, what we talked is we believe that most likely it will be moving towards a machine roomless traction elevator because of the change in cost difference, which frees up square footage in the lower level in the basement. We also know if a hydraulic elevator is still what we need to have, we have room down in that lower level to provide the machine room for the hydraulic pumps and everything.
Yeah,
We, down in that lower level, we have also included a fairly large mechanical room. And so the idea is that the proximity could still be close enough that we could have the pumps in there.
usually you'd have to subdivide a room for the elevator equipment in there, wouldn't you?
Correct.
Is there any consideration with that equipment room to raise the floor elevation to eliminate the step down that, you have a water problem there now that slab drainage, and could eliminate that, but then also make it easier to have access?
Yeah, we definitely want to be able to have that conversation with the construction manager because we'd like to see the floor raised. We don't need the ceiling height that's down there by having that sub-basement space. So it could help in a number of different ways. What we don't know, Commissioner, is that cost something that fits within the budget?
Yeah, okay. In the basement, is the bathtub for the children? Is that why it's shown in there instead of another bathing system?
So, yes. So what we have down here is the child in need of care area, so that you have the restroom with the bathtub in there in lieu of the shower. Yeah.
A lot easier to
Yep.
maintain or provide for the children in that restricted area then, okay?
Correct. Yes.
A lot of times these children are young, so it's nice to have that bathtub choice.
Yeah, that's what I was wondering. In the IT room, we're still showing an exterior access from the areaway.
So we, Commissioner, we are showing windows, and of course, there is the large opening that used to have the double doors. We are recommending that we do have a skylight system over the top of the areaway so that we don't have to deal with water getting in that areaway, having to drain it out. And so what then would happen is we would have windows in this area. We would still have a door that allows personnel to come out in that areaway.
Okay. That's the drawing we got. It looked like double doors were shown there, and I didn't know if it was the intent of trying to bring equipment into that would require the skylight to be operable too, but it's just service.
Service, yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, yeah. And most likely it would not be the double door on this side, yes.
So possibly in the mechanical room, there would be another service door
Correct.
out into that way.
Yep,
Okay.
that's the plan.
So you mentioned the mechanical room on the basement and the mechanical room on the third floor. Basement is going to have HVAC for basement and first, and third floor will be third and second.
So we have purposely waited to have the construction manager on board to do that evaluation, and in fact, that was another component of the interview. Is there are so many systems out there. Some have a low first cost but a higher operating cost. Others may be more expensive in the beginning but provide lower ongoing costs. And so with McCown Gordon, the idea is that we'll work with them and their staff and our engineers to be able to talk about what systems we might be able to use. So conceptually, I've talked about serving from the bottom up to the floor and the top down. We'll just have to see what the systems might be.
Okay, because with our location, when you get into hot water, chilled water systems, the service techs are not quite as familiar with those systems, and so we need to keep in track of what's readily available to
Yes.
long-term maintenance, as simple as possible.
Correct.
I see the vault is being removed so you can utilize the space a little better on both the basement and the
Yes.
first floor.
Yeah. The vault it's an original vault. The idea here is that if we can save the vault door up on the first floor, then that character defining feature is still within the space, but the vault itself would go away. And we did that, Commissioner, to try to group and stack the restrooms so that it's more efficient from a plumbing stack standpoint as much as we can.
And if the vault isn't necessary, as it was in 1916, why keep it just because it was there?
Right, exactly.
Yeah. I see the elevations have worked out from the apparatus bay from the previous design, but your ADA entrance, some of the site development is still left hanging, that the entrances off of that south area are going to be about 18 inches higher than your grade, so.
Right. So yes, you picked up on that. We haven't spent any time looking at the different solutions for making this entrance accessible. We're still waiting for the survey for both properties in order to then start engaging the civil engineer and allowing him to come up with different solutions. But the idea is that on the north, you would enter at the current elevation of the apparatus bay, and then there is a ramp right here that takes, so all of this space is at the lower elevation. You have a ramp, and then everything from this point forward is at an elevation that matches Historic City Hall. The same with the front entry and the Municipal Court. So that area all will be raised at 12 to 14 inches or whatever that height difference is.
So for the site, it looks like visitor parking will be on the south and police parking will be on the north. Have you done enough study of the site, the condition of the alley, the perimeter sidewalks, or do we have a definition of scope?
Not yet, not for
Okay.
the site. During design development, all of that will be worked out. As you noted, the idea is that there would be limited public parking adjacent to the building, both close to the new accessible entrance on the south, but allow then people to use the historic entrance. We do have on-street parking out here, but the public would come in here, and we know there's grade changes that we need to make, and as you noted, how are we going to make that transition from the current lower elevation up to that higher elevation?
With the ADA parking, that'll require some
Yes.
site changes.
Yes. And that would have been required on the north as well when we were looking at that, because the
Right.
slope of the apron out there exceeds, ADA. So
Yeah, the modifications to the plans really have been a great improvement. I think, eliminating one elevator, long-term cost, I'm not for sure. I've heard up to $300 a month service agreements, and then the breakdown and the loss of space. So there's even with replacing the elevator, it's cheaper than in the long term than having the
Right.
two.
agree.
Let's see.
Before we leave this slide, I do have a question with regard to that northernmost parking area that's in the purple on my slide. It's called, the arrow says police parking.
Yes.
And so that, it's my understanding that that will not be a shared parking area, but that will be kind of restricted parking in that space that will be just for police vehicles. Is that correct? Am I interpreting that correctly?
Right. So early in the programming and concept, there was a discussion that we would need secured police parking. The idea is that we would have city staff parking as well, and then also potentially end up with public parking still within that lot. We do believe that the southern portion of that existing parking lot, because of its close proximity to the police department, does need to be designated for police, does need to be secure for them. There is going to be some limited parking out in front where the apparatus bay and that apron is, that hopefully will allow them to easily coordinate shift changes and vehicles right up adjacent to the building.
If, while we're considering earthwork and stuff like that, if it were possible to have angled parking on the north side of the street as opposed to the grassy area that's there right now, would that fill the same needs that you're just defined, or is that not secure enough for the police vehicles?
Yeah, and I'll let Chris chime in if he wants, but my understanding is the preference is that the parking for police is secured. The majority of the parking should be fenced in rather than
Oh, fenced,
open.
okay,
Yeah.
that's what you meant by secured.
Yeah.
I was interpreting secured as restricted, not enclosed.
Right.
Okay, that makes a difference in my question then. So that does take out about a quarter of the parking that's available in that city lot right now. Is that a good interpretation?
So, yeah, during design development, we'll go into more detail with police staff about their needs for the parking. Number of people, shift changes, all need to be able to occur within that. So I'll be able to report back to you about how much of that existing parking lot that they really do need designated for their purposes.
Vance, would it be possible to potentially close that section of the street and dedicate that for the street, or for the police adjacent to the building?
So I suppose, yeah, I suppose that is something that the city could look at. I don't know, with access for fire department and other things, whether that street is necessary as a through street. But I can tell you, if you remember back in early programming, there was a discussion of whether we even build on that street. So just closing it for the purposes of having police parking close by certainly is an option.
Or even making it one way and having some parking?
Yes.
Because I know you're also trying to incorporate that kiosk for citizens to be able to do business in their vehicles.
Right. Right now, you do have a drop box that allows patrons to come up, pull off the street, pay their bills that way. And as part of design development, we're going to actually look at whether a pneumatic system that allows that paperwork and that money to go from the curb into the building rather than stay in a box out at the street.
And is the concept then that that would be attended? The pneumatic tube would actually arrive at
It would
an
actually
attended
come
station?
into the building to the workstation that city staff believes is appropriate.
I
yeah.
see.
Yeah.
Some citizens have a really hard time getting in and out of their vehicles and
Yes,
in and out
indeed.
of the building, so I think it would be helpful for some of our citizens if we were able to do that.
Yes.
If we considered making that a one-way street, how far would you consider taking that one-way to? You would let the entrance come in off of 6th, and they would be able to go east one way on at that point?
It would depend on how they design it, which
Okay.
way they wanted it to go.
Right, and we certainly would want to have the conversations with police department about which way is most expedient for them to leave the site, leave the facility.
For clarification, and anyone who knows, there is a vacant space immediately north of the last paved parking area that I believe is that city property as well?
Yes.
It is? Okay. And what are our plans at this point for that vacant space?
Well,
do
it
we
was
have any-
purchased in order to enlarge the parking lot at some point, and that parking lot probably could be redesigned and made to be more efficient and more usable.
Yes.
It's not the greatest design.
Well, I don't know much about parking lot design. I do know that there's those medians or whatever, what do you call them?
Yeah.
Medians? Do take space and possibly reduce the number of overall parking spaces, but I don't know for sure.
Right.
Anyway, thank you. That was my question with regard to the vacant space there.
Since the site hasn't been finalized, you could look, if you're talking about all options, is move the police parking to the south side of Myrtle and redo the sidewalk
Mm-hmm.
and change the whole traffic pattern there so that the police cars back up into spots adjacent to the building. And then they would have the aisle going out into the street. And,
Right.
if we're going to look at the ultimate solution, then we really need to
Mm-hmm.
investigate all the options there so that we can get the cars closer, look at the exact number you need for response in that location. You could do both too, have on-duty parking adjacent to the building in the lawn area and rework that.
Right.
I was wondering about if the pneumatic system was still being considered. And one thing, if you have visitor parking south of the building, you could move your drop box and the pneumatic maybe on the west side adjacent to 6th Street.
We could. The advantage of it remaining on the north side of the building is city staff who would be receiving the tubes are in that, are overlooking out the windows on the north. And that, so if there were an issue or a problem, obviously there's a call box.
Just for clarification, so I can visualize it better, the pneumatic tube itself would go overhead or underground?
So we would need to be looking at an underground system and see what the challenges might be with that. So it would go underground below the first floor level and come up through the floor, rather than like you see in most banks, it goes up in the roof structure and into the building.
Okay.
So we'll have to determine how viable it is and long-term maintenance and all of those factors will be taken into account.
And with the transition window, if that's where the transition comes from, its location is not visible directly to the outside, so it does give flexibility into to looking at what would work. But
Yes.
And we could have cameras too, so they
yeah,
can see.
that's going to be probably a necessity wherever it goes. So the flexibility works with the total development. You know, it's at this point not to eliminate the kiosk, but look at all options we
Right.
can for the best development for the total package.
Indeed. This, of course, is a long-term solution for the city, and so we want to be looking at what really is, in terms of documents having to be handed from person to person, what is the long-term prognosis for that kind of transaction, and whether we could invest perhaps something equivalent to this in some kind of a digital solution. Even well, I don't know. I can't conceive of them because I'm not of that generation.
Right. No, times are changing and there are many more electronic transactions than there were in the past, and that will continue to grow. But obviously in towns we have an elderly population that may not have access to computer systems or may not feel comfortable.
Indeed, indeed. Can we take, I'm sorry, are we ready for other questions? I want to take a look at the first floor plan one more time. And I'm wanting to look at the hardened space for dispatch. There is a controlled entry point there that faces the west of the building. And in what way is that entry point hardened to make it sufficiently durable to complete the durability of the rest of the walls and structure?
Yeah, there are products on the market that will withstand the weather event that a facility like this would be designed to. So that's not an issue. There's even glazing that certainly is designed to do the same thing as well.
Okay.
It will be more whether the police chief and the police department, what they want in this particular location. Okay. Is it more of an exit? Is it staff side entrance so that they don't have to go through the public lobby? We'll work through that in design development.
Okay, thank you. Also, in the courtroom immediately behind the center chair, I'm going to call that the judge's seat. That darkened spot of wall there, is that emergency egress, or is that is the only egress to and from the space through the two doors to the south?
That's a very good question. That darkened area is actually a masonry opening in between the two apparatus bays, so it does exist as an opening. In working and discussing with staff, And the previous design did have an ante area that a judge could step into if there was a situation in the courtroom. But as we talked, this has 2 exits or entrances into the facility. And with police being adjacent to the facility, we felt like that was not a necessary component to have. So there is no connection directly from the courtroom into the police department.
Okay, I needed that clarification, as I didn't know what the darkened space was referring to.
Any other questions on this first floor, gentlemen?
No, I don't. I think it's a big improvement from the last plan, much more workable and better utilization of space. And again, it still shows that we're not overcrowded in the facility, that there's ample room, that we got the existing main lobby, and like you pointed out with the courtroom, the size of lobby that you've allowed there, it's something that the current plan does not have.
Right.
And is an issue for the courtroom during times the court's in session, but it really gives more flexibility to the building usage after hours, and the potential for the courtroom to be another meeting room or something.
Correct, yes.
So, and the hardened space is a great concept. Saves a lot of money.
Yeah, like I said, that really came from the suggestion of the interviews with McCowan Gordon, and
Yeah.
that was one of the things that they asked us to look at because they saw value in making that change.
And there's still space at the end of that building. It's actually shorter than the existing structure, so I assume for generator or other needs.
Right, we'll have site development around that hardened shell that needs to be addressed. The tower is the question as well, where it goes. So we'll need to work through all of that in
Good
design
plan.
development.
Yeah. I don't have any further questions on
Okay.
the schematic design.
I'm good.
You're good. Yes, I'm looking to see what the tweaks are going to be on the next phase of this, and the changes that have been made already are good, very good.
Thank you. Chris, are you still with us?
Yes, I'm here.
All right. What I'd like is.
Can you guys hear me?
Yes, we can. Chris Berkemeyer with our office, he is calling in remotely. He's been working on the fire and EMS addition. One comment I'll make is, as part of the interviews, McCowan Gordon also questioned or asked us to look at the appropriate location for the new apparatus bay. And in the previous concept, the apparatus bay was at the end of the existing facility, and yet we were doing an addition to the opposite end, and obviously disturbing one end of a site and a building potentially saves some dollars, and so that has been one of the major changes within this concept as well. So Chris, I'm going to let you talk about it, and I'll try to point to things that you want to, and we'll start with the site.
Excellent. So like Van said, one comment that we've had, which was a great comment, was let's add on to just one side of this building instead of two. And I know at the time we kind of talked about an alternate apparatus bay addition. With this design, it's not really an alternate at this point. It's pretty critical to the design of the facility, which is good. So kind of, and it also lends itself to access. Previously, we talked about how are we going to get in or out of that new apparatus bay, and this apparatus addition is for their longest vehicle. Well, it's for their ladder vehicle. And hopefully we can accommodate that much easier on the site by accessing that existing drive with minimal turning or minimal radius changes, excuse me, to get into the facility. So it makes a lot of sense. I heard a comment. Does anyone have a question or?
With this, then, would we develop the access from the north as a street so we could have access to it without a easement, or would we have to have an easement from Building D property?
Yes, we're definitely going to have to have access to it, and I think it's going to be an easement or an alley, so that no one can build anything that obstructs that access to the fire station.
And so, Commissioner, in my brief conversation with the civil engineer, he, at this point, didn't believe you needed to convert it back to a street because it was vacated in the past. That simply an access easement would probably meet your needs, just as Chris said. So that area is controlled and can't be built on by the new owner of the property.
Yes, so it would
Go ahead.
it would preserve our access as a street coming off of Laurel to the back driveway, so it couldn't be obstructed in the future.
Correct.
Okay.
That makes a lot of sense.
It really makes that access more efficient. We're not reorganizing the parking lot on that'd be the west.
Right.
And I think it saves us a lot of effort and reconstruction of those drives. So those construction managers, they're good, and I appreciate their comments. The other thing we've done is we've kind of stepped this building, if you will. So the apparatus bay is kind of stepping from the existing one. And then if you see on that site plan, we stepped the living quarters, the offices, the training facility, and the workout facility as well. And a lot of things we're trying to do there is kind of, for lack of a better word, kind of shoehorn this building or this footprint with all of those existing facilities as well. So we're trying to maintain access, and then on the south side of the station as well, we're pushed right up against the sidewalk or street. So we're kind of trying to step this building in there with limited access around it, and eventually we're going to have a division of these properties so that the former hospital, former city hall, police and fire station can be used to be sold to some other development, and the fire station can stand alone. The other thing you see in this diagram is that we have a lot of green space to the kind of east-south, so that can be utilized for either a different development or maybe a training in the future or expansion of the fire station.
And I will say what you're seeing graphically is still being looked at on an aerial view and not based on the survey that we're still waiting on. So once we get the survey information, we'll see whether it affects anything with the design.
And that's a good point, Dan. You can kind of see that this building, based on that aerial kind of image, we're actually impeding on that yellow line to the south. So, and I know there's setbacks to this area for side yard, front yard, and backyard. And there might be a requirement for a variance for those setbacks in order to let this maintain all the requirements, hopefully from side yard and backyard, but that front yard and its presence to the street, there might have to be a variance in order to build this building.
Kelly, has Fire EMS looked at what space would be required for training if they desired something east of the building?
I'll let David respond to that because he's looked at that with Sean.
Sean can come up, but no, we haven't really looked at that. I mean, a tower would be nice, 2 or 3 story tower, the ability to do that. But, you know, that would be in our future plans. Sean?
Yeah, we weren't aware, if you were planning on keeping that to use as a training facility or not. but I do know that we do have the storage containers where we talked about at one time, utilizing those when we're done, using them for storage, using those for a burn tower. It's just an option.
I think just to keep things moving forward, the question was, do we need it all, or do we want to divide it in case Building D, the purchaser would want additional space? We're kind of stagnant on that. We need to know how much space we want. You know, it's ours now, so we might as well take what we want to make it work, because it's ideal. You need training if you need a tower, if you need to practice laying line to your pumper, if you need a fire hydrant set there or to set up, we got it now. So if we could determine how much space we need, then when the survey's done, we can go ahead and designate that as staying part of this facility, and the rest then would be subject to sell, or it becomes an option then. It'd be nice to keep it all, then we could use it all for training, but it would give us the condition that we've got enough space to make it work minimum for what you want, so you're not going to have to drive somewhere else.
The bigger the space, the more props we'll be able to put up, which are different evolutions, different kinds of training. So the larger the space, the more training opportunities we would have.
And I think, that's what we're looking at. We've got the opportunity to make the ultimate, and we've come a long ways in everything. So I think we would be doing the department a disservice not to take into consideration what you need long term.
I agree.
So, we have it. We might as well look at that and, not let us make a decision to sell it. But if you say, man, we really need it all to train our firefighters, our paramedics properly to respond to different conditions, then it's a no-brainer. Keep the property.
Okay,
We'll do
we
it.
really need it all.
Well, is it ideal for the types of exercises that you would like to carry out there? That's one of the questions that you would certainly want to consider as you look at what the space's use will be for the future. So ideally, is it the right location? Do you want some of those, I'm just assuming a burn tower is where you burn things.
Correct.
So you're going to light a fire in the neighborhood and put it out? Is that what you're going to
In a controlled environment, yes.
Yeah. So is that the ideal place to put a burn tower, or is there a better place, is what I'm saying?
I think it's perfect.
And you'll have time to consider that as you develop the proposal for us.
Well, we've already got the training facility, the room where we can hold, lectures and things inside.
Indeed.
And then by having the training facility right there, it just makes sense to have it all together.
Yeah,
One other comment. Sorry,
go ahead.
one other comment based on that. Eventually, this will become headquarters, and as the city grows and develops, there'll be hopefully a substation potentially, and a lot of those facilities can move out to different areas, but this could be the headquarters for the entire city and the fire department, which that green space allows that growth as well. Even though that training could be kind of immediate, if you will, in the future, that's a great place to let this station become that station as well, kind of a headquarters, if you will.
And I think the discussion needs to continue to develop that, and the decision needs to be made, sooner than later. But, I think, you guys are the driving force.
Yep. Okay.
Yeah, it's an ideal setup, being you're going to have your facility right there to have the training just right outside your door to do that. And when I lived in Oklahoma City, I wasn't very far from a training area for a fire department, and they had a tower that they would practice, and it was, they had it fenced off, but it was on the other side of the street of a residential neighborhood, and they did their training there. You could park and watch them go through the motions there. So it's something that we've never had, but now we have a chance to have. So let's consider what we want to put in that, and if we need all that property, then let's do what we need to do. But let's get what we want to have now while we have it. Okay?
Sounds good.
Okay.
Excellent. The other thing it also provides is a lot of parking and the ability to access the station. So for future training events, for this classroom that we'll see on the next slide in the furniture, and how that lays out with all the spaces, it allows people to park there. We can still park on the west side of the station and hopefully on the north. We do have a couple of overhead doors that we're going to add so that these vehicles don't have only one way in and out of the building.
Mm-hmm.
So we will lose a few spaces in that area. But once we get our survey, like Vance talked about earlier, we'll be able to figure out what those changes are and how they'll affect our site, and then kind of our next steps, if you will. And I know, David, you told me that they've already done their field investigations or information.
Yes.
And we have yet to receive that, but we're going to keep talking to them and try to get that as soon as possible.
Okay.
Great. Here's kind of a blow up of the floor plan. And so what we've done is, as we kind of move forward, and it's our normal process, we start looking at the decisions that we have made internally and start questioning them and figure out what we can do to make those decisions better, make the building function better, ask a bunch of whys and hows. How are people going to access the building? What's the primary entrance? And how does this building kind of present itself to the public, to the main street, and so forth? So what you see in front of you is the existing buildings on the left and a couple of new overhead doors, hopefully, that we can use for EMS and vehicle access.
Mm-hmm.
We have the apparatus addition kind of in the middle, if you will, and that's kind of on my screen, it's kind of a purple, or that's the color that we're using to represent that space. Again, a drive-through, very easily accessible from the exterior. And then on the right, we have a little bit of support space in gray. And then we have the living quarters, and that support space is actually supporting the apparatus bay, not the station, not the fire station living quarters. The orange is the living area, which is primarily the same. We have a dining room, we have a seating area, we have a kitchen, and then some outdoor kind of patio space. We have all the bedrooms where all the firefighters are going to sleep and shower. And then we have kind of a green area to the south, which that is our business office area. Fire chief, EMS, we have report writing, and then a work area for them as well. The yellow's the main lobby, and that's our primary entrance to the station from the public. Adjacent to that, we have a training classroom type room. I can't count how many people we have there. 10, about 30 seats there at those tables. Hopefully places that people from outside agencies can come in and train the firefighters. And then just to the north of that, in blue as well, is a workout facility. And we are thinking that that workout facility is primarily for the firefighters at the station. It's workout weights, cardio, so forth. And we also have an outside entrance for city staff to come in and use this facility as well. And then there's a few lockers and shower and changing area for them to use as they come and go from the facility. I don't know if you're familiar or remember the last floor plans you've seen, but this has changed a little bit. We started looking at how this building is going to be laid out and how it's going to function. We kind of have the main entrance to the station on the east side of the building. It was kind of on the side. As we started looking at that further and trying to figure out, hey, are people going to come in from that side, or are they going to come in from the main entrance or the main street? We kind of started looking at different ways for this building to lay out. We changed the functions. We moved the business to the front side or the south side of the facility, the main lobby there as well, and then the training facility for that adjacent to the lobby. What that did is allowed us to reduce the amount of circulation in the facility, and also the internal circulation from the business area to the day room or the fire station and the workout area as well. It's a pretty kind of direct connection, utilizing the same quarters that we used previously. So that's the floor plan area. And then this image on the bottom left is what we think our first pass kind of what this facility could look like. We're trying to let these metal building components kind of be themselves and express themselves instead of trying to hiding the fact that we're using a metal building or a metal skin. And so these are pretty simple forms and shapes, and as they intersect each other, it kind of creates an identity. So there's kind of a light tan on the left, and I'm looking at that image on the bottom left. That's the existing building. We do hope we can get some new overhead doors, and there'll be alternates, of course, if we can afford them, so that we can kind of express and celebrate the vehicles that are inside the apparatus and let the public know, hey, here's what our fire station is about. And then we have kind of a red/orange. That's the apparatus bay addition, and it's a tall structure. And we also have kind of an overhang or a eyebrow, if you will, that connects all these spaces together. It's tall. And then we reduce the height of that structure with another metal building that celebrates kind of the business area and the living areas. So we're trying to take these simple forms and connect all of them together so it doesn't look like an add-on. It doesn't look like what were they thinking. It kind of creates a continuous thought from existing building to addition. The image in the top right is on the back of the building, and that's kind of celebrating the personal space, if you will, for the fire staff. So we all know that they live there, and they live there 48 hours. I think there's 3 shifts that live there for 48 hours. And so a lot of times when they're not working on their equipment, not training, or not saving lives, they're living at the station. So we're hoping to create this space where they can live, communicate with each other, celebrate, and there's a living kitchen and then an outdoor kind of patio space, if you will. Kind of, we're hoping it's covered, and it might even be screened if we can afford that as well, to kind of give them a little bit of separation and protection from their environment around them. Kind of a place to decompress, hang out with each other, and live.
Now, on that entrance on the south, where the lobby has now been moved to, what the public has access just to, is part of that controlled entry? So
All of it's controlled.
all of it's
So I
controlled,
think the
okay.
front doors are only going to be open maybe 8 to 5, if you will.
Okay,
Or if there's a scheduled training event, they might want to leave those doors open. But if I come up there and I have an emergency, maybe a medical condition or something I need assistance with, I come up to those doors, I push a button,
okay,
and that phone can either ring someone inside the station or it can ring back to the police department dispatch.
okay,
We can program it to ring to either, yes.
okay, good. I wasn't sure about that. That's why I was asking.
How does your square footage compare with this plan from the previous plan?
Reduced.
This,
We've reduced, I don't know the exact number, but we have reduced the amount of circulation. That yellow space in the lobby, it doesn't go all the way through the facility. It's very concentrated in one spot.
reduced is good.
Now, yes, one thing that it has done is the apparatus bay is not an alternate anymore. It's kind of a, once we design/draw and go through, like Vance was talking about, this is our SD phase, our DD and CD phase. That apparatus bay in between the existing facility and the new station, it's not an alternate anymore.
But it's only one,
Part of our base bay.
it's only one connection to existing, so in essence, that's a cost savings from an alternate where you're attaching to 2 sides of the building. Depends on, if it's typical end wall construction and you gotta go with a rigid frame, the cost is cheaper to do it here as one element. as to do two separate. I noticed we talked about a decontamination area, but for true decontamination area, shouldn't we have it closed off so that coming in it would have possible negative pressure, a separate door? So if returning from an event, they need to go in, whether it be medical or fire, with it open, there's potential to bring the contaminants to the whole hose area, and then you're walking through that area from the apparatus bay into the living quarters. That if there was a door...
Yes, I think a door and a wall would be easy to add to what you're looking at to help kind of provide that separation and easily to exhaust that area as well.
Right.
I know we have just decontamination, like kind of showers there shown now, and we also have our kind of our turnout gear, laundry there. But yeah, that would be easily to.
If there was a door from the apparatus bay into decontamination and then a door from decontamination back in to the access pathway between apparatus and living quarters, then you could truly contain anything coming in from a chemical spill, fire vapors, COVID call.
Yes, that would eliminate cross-contamination, exactly. I agree with you. And the good thing is that apparatus on the left side, kind of that purple color, we can do whatever we want there because that's a new facility.
Right.
Facility with new openings, yes.
A nice plan.
On the,
I think it's really worked out a lot better than the previous plan, and I know that question was asked about why does it change or why do we keep seeing something kind of different with these spaces. We're always trying to make it better, and the more we look at it, the more we design, the more time we spend on these spaces or areas or buildings, we're always going to make them better until we can, which means it's built. So.
that between the existing apparatus bay and the purple, the new one that's being added, that space between those to the west, that's just an open area that allows personnel to go from the existing into the new addition?
Yes, we're trying to respect all those openings / doors, person doors. You kind of see one on the north side, which that will remain. We are going to have to work with that pre-engineered metal building supplier, and I know they're kind of local there, and hopefully we can get a hold of them and work with them and our structural engineer of how to create these openings so that we can access that new purple apparatus bay within that same structural system, even if we have to add additional girts to make that work.
Okay.
We will.
So Chris, you're looking at two new openings, one towards the north end of the existing apparatus bay and then another towards the south end. That's what your plan is showing?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. And that's a good comment because we're going to do in building programming, like Vance talked about earlier. Once we start doing room to room, if they don't need access on both sides of that apparatus bay, we could potentially eliminate one of those.
Well, it's definitely going in the right direction, reducing square footage and a much more workable plan. And the relocation of the training and exercise where we're talking about utilizing some of the land to the east as training area, it's flowing in the right direction.
What do you guys think about the look of the building? Kind of like these metal buildings, expressing them, letting them be what they are, just kind of enforcing what we're actually building with, those materials.
I think it's great.
There was a time one time about adding masonry or trying to make this thing look not like a metal building, and we can still, research and look and see what that looks like, but just kind of wondering what you guys think.
Well, when you start adding masonry, then now you're going to have to put a metal stud wall to resist the wind loading and increasing the cost. And I think the components of the metal building can work for what it is, and it's not going to look out of place. I think what you've got shown in your concept, I think it's good. I like it.
Good.
I'm pleased with it also. When it's finished, it'll look like it was all put in place all at one time. You would never know that this was here and this was here and this was here. It
Right.
was all looked like it was put from ground up, and this is what it looked at the end result. No, I like it. I like that.
I appreciate that comment. That's our goal.
It's my opinion that industrial coatings are improving all the time. The surface quality of metal buildings have been greatly improved over the last 20 years or so. So absolutely lean into the metal building design and let's make it what we can and keep the costs as low as possible.
Yeah. Happy with it?
We want the fire department to be proud of it. We want the citizens of Independence to be proud of it, and then you guys as well. And we will be no matter what. But I mean, we want that kind of presence of the fire department to, kind of reflect what the city's about. So.
Right. Well, I like the concept that you've showed and the changes that you've made, and we're all on the right track, so
Good.
that's good.
Good. Thank you.
Good to hear. Thank you. Gentlemen,
Excellent.
any other
Excellent.
questions?
Thank you, guys.
I'm good.
All right. Then I would like to entertain a motion considering item A.
I move to approve the City Hall and Fire EMS final schematic design.
Second.
All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Motion carried. Thank you. Next, item B, consider waterproofing and ventilation proposals for 1916 City Hall. Yes, sir.
Good afternoon or good evening. First, I want to apologize for not coming a little bit earlier and introducing myself. I've met some of you I haven't. I'm Travis Huffman, Project Executive for McCown Gordon Construction. We also have Matthew Linke, he's our Quality Control Manager, with us here as well. I do want to start and thank the Commission, the City Manager's Office, and the Building Committee for selecting McCown Gordon as your partner on this. We're extremely excited to partner with you. And as you can see, and we'll get into some of the detail, we jumped right in as soon as we got the phone call with some of the immediate needs, and that's what we're here to at least discuss today. I don't believe there's going to be any action out of this discussion, but I do want to have some dialogue on the next steps, and we'll certainly come back with some more information, but we wanted to give you an update with the work that's been done to date and where we're at. So with that, on June 10th, Matt and I came to town, met with some members of the city as well as Vance to review water infiltration in the basement as well as air quality in the facility. And so Matt came with some of his tools. We've assembled a report, and we got it all assembled last minute. Matt's going to review that today. We do have some hard copies. Kelly, we may leave with you, and you can decide to distribute that, but we do have a fully assembled report. I didn't get that to you beforehand, so I apologize for that. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to Matt to just walk you through what we found. First of all, what we did on the 10th, and then what we found. And then after he's done, I've got some recommendations and kind of talk about the next steps from our end.
Yeah, thanks very much for having us. So when we came out on the 10th, we did get to meet with a couple of your members here, walk through. We started with just a visual inspection of the space itself, specifically in the basement, looking at the water intrusion that we were seeing. Just during that visual inspection, there were some locations where there was visible moisture or near the edges of the slab-on grade and then on the base of the foundation walls, the sandstone walls. One of the other things that we observed that was occurring a lot was delamination of the plaster, the interior plaster from that sandstone block mass wall. So that's a very good evidence of excess moisture being within that mass wall, trying to work its way out, and it peels off some of that plaster. So after looking at that, we started using some of the tools we have in our tool belt. That's using some moisture meters that we have and then also some infrared thermography tools. So took some images of the space. We've got them here in our reports. I'm happy to show you guys as well. Those infrared pictures confirmed what we suspected, lower temperatures on those surfaces, indicative of the elevated moisture levels in those foundation walls, specifically below grade. So we did that walk all the way around the perimeter within the space, and then we also went into the boiler room as well, and then the room on the south where the window well is.
So based off those results, Vance this week provided some information on the waterproofing system that's currently subsurface, and it looks like it was installed in the early 90s, early to mid 90s. Every indication that we can see is that there's possibly some compromised components within that system, just where that water is infiltrating. The good news is with the thermographer, everything was concentrated around that barrier. But we are what we're doing now is soliciting proposals. We also brought a third-party consultant out that specializes in restoration and waterproofing. And so they confirmed some of our visual inspections along with the report. So we are in the process now of competitively bidding, coming in, excavating around the north, south, and west elevations to expose the existing waterproofing, install a new system, and then compact everything back. The challenge that we have is that west elevation to where the stairs are, and how do we notice some moisture around that area too, where the stairs come down and there's some penetration there. So it's working around that stone walls, the wing walls that are around that entrance. So again, apologize for not having the information, but we want to make sure that we competitively bid that and then provide the accurate pricing, which we intend to do. So there's really a two-step process. There's an immediate need with the air quality control, with the investment that's already been made in the facility, with the exterior and the roofing. And so the immediate recommendation would be to install dehumidifiers to pull the moisture out of the air, since we do not have a conditioned space, but we do have at least above ground sealed envelope for all intents and purposes, with the tech pointing the windows and the new roof. And then we have 2 points of entry at the boiler room location, then also on the south elevation where there was an access hole for equipment, is to seal that up, at least to keep that window well from anytime it rains. It just pulls water in those two corners, which just adds moisture to that building. So what we're trying to come up with is an immediate solution to where we could dam up that opening to keep the water in the space, and I know it ultimately drains out to a sump and gets pushed out, and then put dehumidification in the building to stop the immediate need of the moisture within the interior portion of the facility, as we continue to work on the rest of the proposals for the exterior improvements on the waterproofing system. And then we're also working with Vance on a more temporary permanent solution on air quality control. So the dehumidification would take care of the immediate need, but we're working with Vance and his mechanical engineer on a system that we could install, knowing that construction is several months out. But how do we control the air quality in the space until construction starts or the building gets full conditioned? Mm-hmm. And so we've had some preliminary discussions. We're leveraging our resources in-house to figure out, is there a system we can install that may be able to utilize equipment that could be a part of the permanent system, so that there's not duplication of expenses, and to minimize but also take care of the issue. So again, the only action I would recommend today is to have a discussion on the next steps to create dehumidification, if that's something that McCown Gordon needs to price, or if the city has resources to get systems in place. And then also we can put together a proposal to dam up those two openings at the back corners to keep that water from any rain event from entering the facility. So.
Have the drains been cameraed to see if they're blocked or not?
That would be a part of the process as well. We did not have a plumbing company with a camera at the time that we came out on the 10th, but certainly to check the integrity of the drain.
Don't we have cameras that could be ran down the drain?
Are you talking the well on the north side?
North and south,
The
isn't that what
south
you're
side
talking?
is open. It can be open.
Okay.
The north side, it's collapsed. We've had Newtons out there several times. They can get so far, and it just,
The camera won't go through it?
yeah, they can't get past a certain area. Hofer and Hofer told us. So it's
Okay.
that on that north side.
So there's no need to dam up the south opening if it drains out, right?
Plugged all the time, so it's, you have to continue to clean it. Right now, it's completely boarded off and screened over, so we can't get to it.
And you haven't excavated anything to look at the waterproof on the outside of the basement to see what condition it is?
No, Vance had provided some photos from, I believe earlier, maybe several months back, there was a small excavation done just to check a small section. I have photos of that, but when we came out on the 10th, we did not do any additional below-grade exploration.
Yeah, because it seems like before you bid on re-waterproofing, you'd want to see a bigger area of what is there to determine what the problem is. You know, has the liquid pulled loose from the sandstone or limestone, or, you know, what caused the compromise, and even to know what's going to have to be done to prep the wall for new waterproofing.
Yes, certainly the limestone would have to be, the old system removed, and then also keeping the integrity of the limestone, and then retuck pointing the limestone. I believe there's some historical factors as well as the integrity of the system itself. So yes, I agree that there's some additional exploratory work to determine the full extent of the scope. But the excavation piece is a big portion of the cost. So determining the right way to attack that, and that's what we're doing now, is to figure out what are the true steps so that we can properly advise the commission on how to get the information and the full scope, but also have options depending on what we find.
Yeah, because I don't think we need to excavate the whole thing before we find out what needs to be done, do we?
No, the challenge is mobilization with an excavator, the cost to excavate, and then you have an exposure with an open pit until you determine what the scope is going to be. So it's a fine line. I'm not in disagreement with you, but you're then creating additional exposure and potential cost. So it's something that we all need to consider, and those options need to be priced to figure out what that would be.
What's the material on the wall? Is it sheet membrane or is it liquid that was applied?
It was a two-part system.
Yeah, it's a cold fluid applied waterproofing that's on there now. Yep.
Are you asking about the new proposed system?
No,
Okay.
Yeah.
no, because how well can you remove it?
The proposal we've got from our trade partners that we're looking at right now is to pressure wash it off.
It won't pressure wash off.
We'll see if that's the case. They've suggested that at the length as the length of time that it's been installed, that it may come off with a power wash. Worst case, they've said, is a sandblast to get it off.
Yeah, I don't remember the actual product when it was put on, but I guess I'm just kind of skeptical to do the whole thing without knowing more. You know, it's easy just to sit back and say we're going to do it, but, you know, I don't want to get into change orders that you don't know if you can power wash it, you don't know if it'll come off. If it's rubber, you're not going to sandblast rubber off, are you?
So, Commissioner, when we did our test pit almost 2 years ago, and we did not dig all the way to the foundation, we dug down approximately 3 feet or so. What we did find is that the granular fill, the drainage fill, was clean. There were still remnants of the protection board. We found that membrane was pliable, but we could pull it away from the wall in that small area that we disturbed, and we tried not to disturb a lot. So that would be something that we want clarified, is how we think it can come off. The foundation is sandstone, and so that is a little bit of a challenge from over time. It continues to soften.
If it gets water in it, yeah.
And so I think that is what is happening. The way it was detailed, the location of drain tile, everything looked good. According to the historic drawings, we have a concrete footing, which means we're not wicking up water from the bottom of that sandstone up. So the termination of that waterproofing system, you would think should be intact, but it's 30 years old. And that's the problem that we're experiencing. And I know Commissioner Hayes had asked us, when's an appropriate time to know whether we have to do just repair or replacement. And now that we buttoned up the exterior with the roof, the walls, and the windows, and using their infrared thermography, it is frustrating that around the perimeter we are currently getting moisture in. We checked with David in the city to make sure the sump pumps were still operating, because hydrostatic pressure could be building up. So early indications are it's probably a full replacement rather than just spot, patch, and repair.
Yeah, and now's the time to do it. What about with new penetrations for water and sewer? It would be,
We
if
talked
you
about
waterproof
that as
and you
well.
pull it,
And
and you
when-
backfill, then you've got to excavate and you risk damage that, do you install sleeves now
Yes.
at this time?
Yeah, that would be the plan. Is
And then-
we would do any penetration that we believe we're going to have through the wall, so that our waterproofing system is sealed around it, and then that conduit, pipe, whatever it may be, can be capped, and we can pull it 5 feet away from the building, get into it at the appropriate time that we need new services brought in. Yes.
And then the stairs, you go ahead and remove them again at this time and then waterproof everything?
So the previous package did remove the landing and the steps, brought the waterproofing into the stone wing walls, but did not waterproof the wing walls. And so we'd be looking at something potentially similar to that. It's still a challenge, and there's a cost, of course, involved with having to tear out concrete in order to do the waterproofing. But what I can tell you, according to city staff, is at one of those stair locations, it would be the north, they remember water coming through that wall regularly, and in fact, at times with quite a bit of pressure. That's an indication to us we do have to spend the money to open it back up.
Well, if you're gonna put skylights over the area wells, then you would waterproof the outside of the area wells now too, wouldn't you?
Yeah, we would, and according to the original documents, they were to have damp proofing on them. I don't know whether it ended up the same product or a different product. And there was also correspondence that on the north side, it may have been eliminated as a cost saving. So as part of this project, because the window well would become interior space now, we would wrap the waterproofing all the way around. Yeah.
So with all that, the pipe penetrations covered at the same time, it's gonna just about eliminate any potential future leak for.
That certainly would be the goal, and I know Commissioner Hayes was asking, could this be a standalone project? Could it move forward earlier? And working with McCown Gordon, that's the discussion. And what that would allow us to do then, obviously, is to determine during the time we're finishing our documents for the renovation, and during the renovation, that wall would still be exposed, and we'd be able to monitor and watch that wall.
Well, then with what you're talking about, and since we're handling this a little different with the construction manager at risk, and you mentioned maybe being able to utilize future equipment, air handling, air moving equipment for ventilation. What possibility is there, instead of going tradition, you finish all the drawings and start construction? What about fast track? So then, you're continually moving forward at an earlier phase. That
Certainly, what we don't want to get into is too many design packages that don't benefit the schedule of the project. But this is certainly one, obviously, with the risk and analysis of just knowing that you have a watertight building. And then after that, with the renovation, other than maybe some early mechanical to identify from a schematic or design development level, what equipment ultimately, and that's in conjunction with our input back to Vance and his team, of what's the optimum mechanical system to utilize in this facility. Is there any equipment that we can then use for this temporary situation? Because I think there's, back to the dehumidification and some just some wall work to keep the rainwater out. I think there's a temporary solution until we can get to that point to identify what's the bridge system until we get to build out the space. And I think we can do some early analysis on the equipment to identify what that may be.
Well, if there's projection about interest rates increasing in 2023, if it could work with, or is it possible to look at the fast track to lock in lower rates and actually begin both projects as the drawings are being finalized and the finished design? And
I think we're on a fairly decent path now. Vance, you may talk about your timeline on the design, development, and construction documents, but our intent initially on our schedule was to have an early 22 construction start, which would still
Okay.
put you in that window, and with our construction schedule, that would be completed by the end of that
Okay.
year.
Before we leave the topic of waterproofing, I have one question.
Certainly.
And that is that in your description, you specifically excluded the east side of the building for this type of waterproofing effort. Are you saying that the east side does not show any water infiltration, or is somehow already protected from water infiltration?
So two parts to that answer. When we went down into the vault room, there were some signs of water infiltration. What we haven't identified or discovered is when did that infiltration happen, because that apparatus bay is a single level structure above grade, and so the waterproofing, the only way to be able to do that is to rip the interior of that apparatus bay out to get down to that wall that sits in the center of the old structure to the new. And so before that, and that would be a significant expense, I would recommend some more exploratory analysis. And we were going to, one of our recommendations was to do some floor cores just to look for ground pressure or groundwater, both in the basement as well as in the apparatus bay, to see if there's any concern from that far east. I know that's on the downhill side, from water coming in from there. I wouldn't imagine it would make it that far. So early indications is maybe it was a previous issue, but that's some of the due diligence that would need to be done.
Thank you.
And looking at the drainage from the courthouse on the east side to make sure where it comes across that it can drain north and south.
Correct.
Okay. So tonight, all we're doing is getting your information. You're going to send the reports to Kelly and she'll get those to us.
So we've got the findings that we can give Kelly tonight. The next steps, I believe, is we're going to continue the pricing exercise for the waterproofing and then also the analysis on the air quality control. But it's really the decision on, and we can work on pricing, or I don't know if the city has the resources to explore the dehumidification rentals or equipment to put in the space. Just looking for some advisement on that front.
Did we not have dehumidifiers put in a previous time inside the facility at one time, some time ago?
We did have just some, at one point, have some residential type in a few places.
I think for that, you need to work with Kelly and Dave and get them the information, and then they can see what we need to do. The two motions that we have looking at tonight, neither one's applicable.
Right.
We don't have,
No action tonight.
yeah, so basically, we're just getting general information.
Correct.
And we'll get the reports.
You
Yep.
can email those findings as well, right?
Yes, uh-huh.
Okay.
Yeah.
So Kelly and David, I'll be in touch just to talk about the dehumidification. And again, tonight, I know it was on there for action, but the intent was to just keep you up to date on the action that has been done over the last 2 weeks, knowing that we're working diligently to get you all the information with protecting the asset and the investment that you've already made on that building. So thank you.
All right.
Thanks. I don't
Thank
have any
you.
more questions.
Thank you very much. All right, then I would like to entertain two motions here, gentlemen.
No, I'm sorry, Mr. Mayor, we're going to be.
There was no information.
We don't
to
have
act on.
information to act on.
Oh, I'm sorry.
We're
Okay,
ready for
I'm
item
sorry.
C.
So we're just going to move to item C. I'm sorry. Consider ordering the demolition of 418 South Walled Avenue. And I have Damone, is that Hatch?
Yes, sir.
Okay, Damone, I've got a request here for you to address the city commission considering the topic of us awarding the demolition of 418 South Walled Avenue. So, are you the owner of the property?
Yes, sir, or commissioners.
Okay, I'll let you go ahead and speak. Give you 3 minutes to make your presentation here.
Good evening, my name is Moan Hatch, the second. I'm here tonight to save my house, and with that being said, I'm gonna ask the commissioners this evening for 3 weeks to give a proper demonstration of what progress has been done for the house, and also for the right permits that need to be done as far as framing, demolition. As far as progress so far of what's been done, I have purchased a dump truck to do the work mostly from what I can do personally in my hand. My contractor was here earlier, if you did not see him. He's from Edna. He had to go and do some other stuff, but we're a hot water tank. But yeah, I'm gonna ask for 3 weeks to show you properly how the progress of saving my house is.
All right, if I understand right, there are no utilities to the house, is that correct?
That is correct.
Okay. And this fire had taken place several months ago?
Yes.
Okay. And there's no one residing in the facility?
I'm currently
now?
am.
You're residing in the facility now?
Yes, sir.
And you have been since the fire?
Day 3 of the fire.
What have you done to the house since the fire?
The front half, the fire took the back of the room mostly. It was complete loss. Up until this point, we have framed off the back side of where the fire was the most damaged. And then from that point forward, everything has been repainted. We're using a micro epoxy paint. It does a great job with the masking of the fire and all the damage that the smoke did. The progress with that has made it all the way to where we framed in from the burnt side. So the Noaa Utilities, as you said earlier, is the electrician. It's been hard to get anyone to come in so far. With the house next door, I own the land next door, and with me losing that, I brought all the things that I had stored over there. So it's been hard for an electrician to come in here and examine this. That's what I got right there.
Do you have, the house, when we looked at the house, why did we determine the amount of damage to the property?
We consider the damage to be a total loss. Our issues is Damone has not worked with Tyler, hasn't stayed in contact, hasn't acquired the proper permits or the information that Tyler has requested to this point, which got us clear to this point. He has been notified for several hearings, and even the condemnation hearing, they didn't show up. I mean, we're always willing to work with somebody if they will properly give us the information, the timelines, and acquire the proper permits to do the work. This work has not been through Tyler. None of this has been inspected or anything as far as Tyler. So, I mean, the other issue is Damone. We have a lot of complaints from your neighbors. As you can see on the pictures, the condition of the property, it's a code violation. You have vehicles that are in violation, and we just have a lot of complaints about this structure at this point that we've been trying to deal with you on.
With your, since you haven't worked with Tyler, that's a significant problem. How do you propose to address that issue?
Me and Tyler actually have been in contact. He actually comes by and we speak regularly. But in the beginning of this, I've asked for 3 weeks because you look at this picture and you see nothing of the progress. I cannot stand here in front of you and show you what has been done up into this. It looks nothing like the pictures you're being shown right now. So I'm asking 3 weeks to give you or give me the opportunity to show you that this isn't a total loss. Where I stand now, I don't see a total loss. The subflooring to the back where it didn't get burnt. The top half only got burned. That's what I'm asking today, gentlemen.
Well, we're asking, Damone, you visit with Tyler, but he has continually asked you for a plan and for the drawings and everything that you're going to do, and you never provide that to us. You have never come in and got the permits to do what you're doing. We're willing to work with you and do that, but you have to work with Tyler and do what Tyler's been asking you to do. And that's why he's tried to communicate with you. That's why he's asked you to come to these meetings and visit with the commission. So we're willing to work with you, but I need you to work with Tyler and do what he needs you to do so that we can make this process work.
We have another commission meeting in, what, 2 weeks?
Yes.
And you're asking for 3 weeks. In 2 weeks, we could bring this up again, but in that 2 week period, you'd have to have a construction schedule to Tyler. You'd have to meet all the requirements that David and Tyler have in a 2 week period. Not that you're done, but just, you said 3 weeks. We gave you 2 weeks to get that
Perfect.
to us and photographs of what you've done and worked out. And in 2 weeks, we'll reconsider the bid for demolition.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think that's fair.
That's
So
more than
is-
fair.
That's very important, Damone, because all we're asking is that you give us expectations and you meet them. So if you say you're going to do something and you do it, then we'll be delighted. So these are the types of things that, certainly within a 2 week time, I would expect that we would be able to put a plan together. Maybe
Absolutely.
not complete the work, but to complete the plan for the work. That should be able to be accomplished in that period of time, and also to demonstrate the progress you've talked about so far, to be able to demonstrate that the property has changed in appearance from these photographs, and and significantly, not just to the trained eye, but to the untrained eye, that you'd be able to say, wow, that's a lot better. It's a lot cleaner. It's a lot, and you can demonstrate the progress. But The risk, of course, is that if you don't follow through, that we will need to take action. So
Understood.
please, if you do take this time, if we give you this time, take advantage of it. Take full
Absolutely.
advantage of it.
Yeah. I would like to see, in that 2-week time, something done with the vehicles.
Understood.
Okay.
The vehicles of now aren't there. If you're looking at this picture on the right, you see the vehicles. That is no longer the issue. They've all been moved over to my property that's next door, for which looks a lot better, cleaner. With the house being lost there, it makes it great for parking.
But they have to be legal. And what I mean by that,
Yeah.
you're not meeting the requirements that Aaron has told you have to meet. And that's the issue. And we'll work with you on that.
Right. With the back half, I had this house broken up into 3 living quarters. The front half was a separate, the middle was a separate, and the back half was mine. With that being said, I lost everything I owned, including most of my titles. I just barely scrounged up like 2 or 3 of them. So I understand me and Aaron have been in talks about that, and I've steadily tried to file, and we're down to, what, 2 more that needs to be?
I say, in this 2 weeks,
Yeah.
we just got to get this cleaned up and worked out.
So the vacant lot that's been cleaned up, the property that we just condemned and removed here a few weeks ago, which is just a vacant lot now.
Yep.
So all these vehicles are sitting on that vacant lot? Or
Yes.
the majority of these vehicles are sitting on that vacant lot?
I have sold some, I've parted out some, scrapped some,
But
so
you
I am
have-
downsizing.
But you have 3 or 4 sitting on the lot?
There's at least
No,
3.
I
At least
have
3?
more,
More than 3?
yeah. 4 of them are legal though.
Okay. Well, there's a
Let's just say 5 right off the top.
Okay, okay. Well, the complaint has, because I've heard complaints too from people that live in that area about the vehicles that appear to be abandoned on the property, about vehicles being worked on, and then motors being revved at, 9:30, 10 o'clock at night. That kind of activity going on there at that property. And I've talked to people about this, so there's a certain procedure that you have to follow.
Understood.
And that's what got the property that was tore down adjacent to that,
All right.
because there was no procedures followed.
I
Come
understand.
in and you took out the front part of the house and used it as an open garage, a residential property. So that's just not, we don't operate like that. We can't
Understood.
operate like that. So, 2 weeks. But I will come by and check this,
Please do so.
and I'll see what it looks like myself. And I hope to hear no further complaints from the neighborhood in these next 2 weeks anyway.
Understood.
So
Thank you,
I've addressed the
Commissioners.
issues that the neighbors have wanted me to address on this with you now.
Okay.
I guess what we're really saying, it's up to you whether you want to save the house or have it tore down.
Understood. That's why I'm here tonight.
Well, if you don't comply, if you don't meet with Tyler, you don't meet with David, and you don't continue to communicate, then what you decide is that you want us to tear it down. Because this isn't, we don't want to tear the house down, but you're going to tell us if you don't communicate, you're saying, I want you to tear it down, and that's how we're going to have to vote.
That's fair enough.
Yep.
Thank you.
Appreciate you coming.
All right, thank you.
So,
Do we need a motion to table?
Just table this
Yeah,
for now.
table.
Okay, go
Till
ahead.
July 8th.
July 8th? Okay,
I'm ready to make that motion, Mr. Mayor.
okay, go ahead, Dean.
I move that we table the action to award a demolition contract for the previously condemned structure at 418 South Walled Avenue until July 8th.
Second.
All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye, motion carried. Okay, we're to reports. We've all had a chance to look at the tree board, library board of trustee, and the housing authority minutes. Any comments on those, gentlemen?
I have no
No.
questions.
Okay, moving along, city manager comments. Kelly?
Lacey, can give you an update on the American Rescue Plan funds.
Okay.
So earlier today, you should have received a link from Kelly to the Kansas Recovery webpage. I strongly encourage each of you to get familiar with that webpage. Go look at the frequently asked questions and processes that they have laid out. New information becomes available almost daily. They're updating those frequently asked questions, so it's a really great resource to become familiar with. Since the last time we spoke about these funds, really the only update that I have is that Kelly and I attended the county commission meeting, was that Monday? Where they discussed they're receiving approximately, I think, $6 million from the federal government to disperse in a variety of manners. They have some leeway of how they can spend those funds, but they talked for the first time at that meeting about the process that they're going to go through to divvy up the money into the different buckets that are appropriate for the funding. And as I understood it, the process is going to be really similar to how they did the Spark funds. So if you recall, for Spark funding, they told all the eligible receiving entities, how many dollars were allocated to different buckets of goals that they were trying to meet in the community. So healthcare, education, local government funding, things like that. So here, over the next several weeks, they will be going through that process. I think that they're doing their research, listening to community members and healthcare entities, things like that, on what the needs are in the community, and then they will come up with a plan of how to move forward with the funding. So we're just working with them and keeping an eye on the process and helping and contributing wherever we can in that. But I will have more to report once they figure out exactly what they want to do. As far as the $1.2 million that's coming directly to Independence, that is money that's being passed through from the state directly to Independence, and there's a process for requesting those funds. Most of the process I've already gone through, but at your next meeting, I can bring, there is a terms and conditions agreement and assurances with compliance of Title VI of the Civil Rights Act. So it's just two documents. We had to sign something similar for the previous grant as well. So I can bring those before you at the next commission meeting for approval. And then after that, it's an online request portal. So I will go online and actually request the funding from the state, and then I believe they will direct deposit half of it this first round, and from what I've read, they'll do it within 14 to 30 days, so it's a pretty quick turnaround. Any questions?
Are you going to send them the information before the commission meetings so we can look at the agreement?
Yes.
Yeah.
It'll be in your next packet.
Okay. Some of it's not real exciting reading, so I need time to
It's the standard agreement that we've signed previously,
Yeah.
but yes, I will include it.
We did have something that was emailed from Doc Marshall.
Yes, some
uh, Information on the American Rescue Plan Act of 2021. So I don't know if you gentlemen had a chance to look at your emails or not, but this,
And I sent that, I
it
think,
came in. It came in
a
this.
few weeks ago, and then I sent it again today in case.
Okay,
needed
I
to-
just saw it today, so
Yeah.
I didn't know whether the other gentleman had seen it or not.
And I would say the links that we sent after that email are much more detailed information is within those links. So I would definitely go there and pull the frequently asked questions. And there's a lot of useful information.
Okay. All right.
Thank you, Lacey.
Thank you,
Thanks.
Lacey. All right, Kelly.
That's all we have.
That's all we have, okay.
Kelly, I had one more question. I forgot. We just wanted to clarify one thing with you on grant submissions, with the fact that for large projects or budgeted items that we've already got approved in the budget, we wanted to make sure that you are all okay with me applying for as many grants as I possibly can without coming before you to first ask permission to even submit the grant, because a lot of them are time sensitive, and I may get information about it one day and then have to submit something the next day. So I just wanted some direction on if you guys are okay with that.
One thing I understand about the grant process is not only are they complex, there is some risk of them not being granted. So being timely and being as prompt as you can with the information increases the likelihood of the grant actually being awarded to you. So we don't want to be part of a delay in the process that would keep us from getting the monies. So anything that we can do to help you, I would support.
Okay, and I still have to bring them back for formal approval, so if you, for some reason, didn't want to accept the grant, you could deny it at that time. And I'm happy to report on grants that I've submitted in the interim as well.
That process seems complete to me.
Yeah, I think the submission of the grants is, it helps us on our funding. If we can get half of it, 10%, it takes our money farther. So I don't see a restriction of applying, but then we have the right, if once you get it, you find out there's conditions when it comes to us that we can deny it, that just because you apply doesn't mean we'll accept it, but we got to consider everything. But definitely I think the application for the grant is something, you don't get it unless you apply.
Right, okay, that makes it a lot easier for me, so I appreciate it.
Yeah.
You're welcome. Thank
Just
you, Lacey.
go for it, as many as you can fill out.
Go for it.
Well,
Yeah.
I have 4 very capable interns in my office right now, so
Very good.
Use them.
yes.
Yeah, all
All
right.
right, thank you.
Lacey, thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, commissioner comments. Commissioner Hayes,
I have none.
Commissioner Kiflish,
I don't have any.
and I don't have any either. We've already gone through our public concerns, yes. And we are now ready for an executive session. And this will be for 15 minutes, and it will involve the commissioners.
Could we extend 5 additional minutes to allow us to take care of necessary business prior to entering into executive session?
Let's do that. So I make a motion that we recess for a 5-minute break.
Or just go
Let's
for 20?
Incorporate it.
Oh, make it for 20?
Yeah.
Okay. So the first motion will be a motion for an executive session. I move that we recess for an executive session concerning confidential data relating to financial affairs and/or trade secrets of a company pursuant to the exception found at KSA 75-4319B4. The open meeting will resume
8:15.
at 8:15. That'll be for 20 minutes. And that is the motion. Do I have a second?
I second it.
All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye, motion carried.
Did you give Dean his?
There.
Oh, no.
Was that mine?
Yes.
Thank you. Do we need this for the session?
No, it's the copy of the report.
Thank you.
So I have one for David. I'll let you take it, David.
All right, the meeting is back in session, and there was no action taken on that executive session. And we have another executive session, so I'd like to make a motion. I move that we recess for an executive session for discussion of possible acquisition of real estate for city and public purposes pursuant to the preliminary discussion on acquisition of real estate exception, KSA 75-4319B6, and that will be for 15 minutes, and we will resume the meeting at 8:30. That's the motion. Do I have a second?
Second.
All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye, motion carried. Excuse me. All right. All right, the meeting is back in session. There was no action taken, and we are up to adjournment. So I make a motion that we adjourn. Do I have a second?
Second.
All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye, motion carried. Thank you.